let us take the words मैं हूँ, तू है, वो है. Okay, first, second, third person. हूँ है. In Marathi it is आहे, ahes, ahe. In Konkani it is assa, assa. In Gujarati it is thu, the. You see, you can make out somehow that they're related, but they are so distinct from each other. But do you know what is the Sanskrit words? Asmi, asi, asti. And what is the Russian? Esmi, esi, esti. What is Lithuanian? Esmi, esi, esti. What is Avestan? Ahmi, ahi, asti. What is Greek? Emi, esi, esti. So Michael Witzel, what he does is he just tries to search out for non-Aryans. Everything he has tried to show how many people are non-Aryans in the Rigveda, and that includes, in one place he accepts that Paktas are the Pakhtuns and Parshwas are the Persians, and then in another place he says no, they are non-Aryans. And when he understands the implications of what he's saying, he backs out, and that is his biggest problem. Like I have shown in my books, I've given all his quotations where he says that the Saraswati is the Ghaggar Hakra of Haryana. And once the satellite imagery established that the Saraswati dried up in 1900 BCE, and therefore the Rigveda must have been much older, and that all the Indus sites, there's a greater concentration of Indus sites on the beds of the Saraswati. This became apparent, say, 25, 30 years ago. And after that, suddenly, I have in my book, I have given a long list of all the Western scholars, including Witzel, who have accepted that Saraswati was the Ghaggar Hakra. And now suddenly they're saying, no, Saraswati is in Afghanistan, and it is the modern Hindu fanatics of India who are saying it is the Ghaggar Hakra. That means all these scholars up till now were Hindu fanatics, including Witzel until 15 years ago.
Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.
Namaste. I, Mithilesh and Sumit, welcome you all to a new episode of the Eastern Report. Today, we have noted Indologist Shrikant Talageri on our show. Welcome, sir. The Rigveda is the oldest and most important source of material for India, Indo-Aryan, and Indo-European history. It is a text which has been part of a widespread living traditions thousands of years old. Sri Talageri confirms emphatically that India was also the original homeland not only of the Indo-Aryans but also of the Indo-Iranians and the Indo-Europeans. Shrikant Talageri, born in 1958, was educated in Mumbai, where he lives and works. He has devoted several years and much of the study to the theory of Aryan invasion of India and interpreted the Vedas with the help of its internal chronology of Rigvedic riches. Within Rigveda, with the help of genealogical records, Anukramanis. So, Talagiri, what made you research Rigveda and write a book about it?
Actually, first I started this whole thing I wanted to write storybooks. I wanted to be a writer. And I was writing in English. Then someone suggested, why don't you write in your mother tongue, Konkani? So then I started to try to do that. But then I realized that the Konkani language has many sounds which cannot be represented well in Devanagari or any existing script. So then I became interested in learning alphabets in different languages of the world. So you see, when I was in college, I was in commerce. But instead of studying commerce, I used to spend my time studying all about, means I just passed in my commerce and I was lucky I managed to get a bank job before I became unemployable. So before I completed my BCom, that is to say. So all the time I used to go to the libraries and, study about different forms of music, languages, alphabets, plants. This is because I wanted to produce an encyclopedia showing that Indian culture is the greatest in the world in every respect, whether it is climate, topography, plants, animals, human culture, civilizational culture, games, dances, music, art, architecture, everything. So after some time, I realized that was a job which was too big for one person. You require a big institution for that. But I became interested in languages. and I started studying different alphabets of the world. So most of the alphabets of the world, at that time I could read, even if I didn't know the languages. Then I learned the language numbers 1 to 100 in more than 100 languages, including African, Red Indian, Chinese, Japanese, Mongolian, all sorts of things like that. So during all this, I came into contact with this Aryan invasion theory. And I could make out that there was something seriously wrong with it, because there is nothing in the tradition which supports anything which we are taught in that respect. So I became very keen to study this subject. So I was reading books by Sitaram Goyal and Ram Swarup, published by Voice of India. And I wrote to Sitaram Goyal ji. I told him that I want to do research on this Aryan invasion and I want to write a book on it. So he told me, see, this is a subject which Western scholars have developed, have spent 200 years on it. So I don't think you will be able to deal with it. But if you think you can, just send me whatever little you have written up till now. So I sent him 3 chapters. And he was instantly, I received his reply saying, yes, I think you will be able to deal with the subject. You write the book. So my first book, what I did was I took all the arguments for the Aryan invasion, the linguistic, all kinds of. If you see my first book, you will see that each chapter is devoted to one particular aspect of the arguments of the AIT. Now, at that time, very honestly, I had never even seen a copy of the Rigveda in my life. And everything I have written in that book about the Rigveda and the Puranas was based on other people's books and what they had written, like Malati Shenge, P.L. Bhargav, Pargitar, and various other Indologists and Western and Indian scholars. Now, after I finished that book, I thought, let me actually analyze the Rigveda itself and see what I can get from that. Because the Rigveda is the single most important document in the whole world. Because, it is, even the Western scholars date it at 3,200 years before this. That is 1,500 to 1,200 BCE. But I have shown that it goes far beyond 3,000 BC. But even if you take the Western scholars' date, it is still the oldest book of this size anywhere in the world. You have older Egyptian and Mesopotamian documents, but they are in, alphabets where people have to decipher them and then, think of how to fill in the blanks and the gaps. And they have to, whereas this is a ready-made book, which is preserved as per Michael Witzel, like a tape recording of what it was when it was composed. So according to Michael Witzel, this is better than any of the Hebrew, Greek, Chinese, and Latin books, because it has been preserved without the change of a word, without a change of a syllable, without the change of a tone, right from the moment it was composed, once it was given its final form. Now, this is a very great thing, because, all those who memorized the Rigveda, they could not even understand what they were memorizing. They just memorized it very strictly, not shifting one tone, one alphabet, one letter. So we have it today, as Michael Witzel says, in the purest form that it was when it was composed, and which is the oldest. Now, that is in the whole world. But now when we are talking about Indo-European languages, Indo-European languages are the languages of India, Iran, Central Asia, and Europe. It has this family of languages. There are about 19 families of languages in the world. Dravidian and various Sino-Tibetan, Ural-Altoic, Austronesian, American Indian, Eskimo Aleut, African, etc. But this is the most important, because it is dominating almost every continent in the world. Europe, North America, South America, and Australia are fully English speaking. In Asia, you have India, Iran, and most of South Asia. And in other places also, English and Russian and German and Spanish are very important. So you see, this is the single most important language family in the world. And it is the most mysterious, because all other language families are found in one particular part of the world. Whereas this is spread out right from Sri Lanka to the south of India to Iceland to the northwest of Europe. So it could not possibly have been spread out over this whole area from the beginning. Obviously, it must have spread out from one single area. And because the people who were studying this were Europeans, and they were studying it on the basis of Sanskrit, both being Indo-European languages, so it became a very important and contentious study. Now, uh, this was based on the Rigveda, as I said, is the most important document. Now, what I realized was that when I was after I finished my first book, I wanted to concentrate on the Rigveda alone, and for that, I decided to go by P.L. Bhargava's book. You know, P.L. Bhargava had given a dynastic list of kings and dynastic lists of rishi composers. So I tried to go by his list of rishi composers when I was writing my second book, and I found that everything became a mess because, according to him, Vishwamitra and Vasishta were the latest rishis, and all the Atri and Kanva were the earliest. But when you actually examine the Rigveda, you see it is the opposite. Atri and Kanva are the latest, and Vishwamitra and Vasishta are the earliest. And he was going according to Puranas and epics and all that, which contain very, very much later. As I said, even the ancient people did not know the meanings of all the Rigvedic words. If you see the works of Indologists, all of them have noted that it is very difficult to actually give the meanings and this thing of many of the Rigvedic words. So, you see, I decided that I will go only according to the Rigveda, and I will take the Puranic data only where it fits in with the Rigvedic data, others I will not take it. So, I completely changed my way of studying the Rigveda when I was writing my second book I'm talking about. And then I examined only the Rigveda, and I found that it was revealing so many things that I showed that the Rigveda consists of 10 books or mandalas. So I showed how those 10 mandalas were in a chronological order. You know, first there was book 6, then book 3, then 7, then 4 and 2, then 5, 1, 8, 9, 10. And this is not based only on my own analysis. I did it on the basis of my analysis. If you see my book, this Rigveda, a historical analysis, I have produced different criteria. I have shown on the basis of different criteria, like the relationships between the composers, the relationship between the kings and rishis mentioned within the hymns, then the state of purity of the hymn family structure, etc. Now, all of this fitted in exactly with the what the European scholars had decided on the basis of linguistics and textual studies. They had decided that books 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, the family books came earlier, and books 1, 8, 9, 10, the 4 non-family books came later. Okay, that was the first division. Secondly, they realized that within the family books, one of them, book 5, was later than the other family books, and it was like the non-family books. So you get a clear-cut division of the Rigveda into 5 old books and 5 new books. 6, 3, 7, 4, 2 are the old books in that order, and 5, 1, 8, 9, 10 are the new books. Now, actually, when I was doing the second book, the one I think which we are discussing today, I I was hesitating to give any dates to the Rigveda because I said, see, you cannot date. The oldest datable evidence we have in India is the Ashoka pillars, Ashoka inscriptions, which are just 350 BC. And before that, everything is speculation and wishful thinking on the parts of Indians on the one hand, and non-Indians or Westerners on the other hand. All wishful thinking. So Indians say that our texts go back 5,000, 10,000, 15,000 years, and the Westerners say no, they all come after 1,500 BC. So it was all purely wishful thinking. There is no actual textual proof for this. So, but on the basis of my analysis in 2000, when I wrote this book, I gave some tentative dates. I said that the old books come up to before 2400 BC, and the new books are from 2400 to 1500 BC, when the Rigveda was given its final form. And I wrote in that book that I have no means of proving it. This is just my logical analysis. But now what happened was that after I wrote this book, there was a debate going on where people said, that spoked wheels were invented in 2200 BC, and they are found referred throughout the Rigveda. So, which proves that the Rigveda was composed after 2200 BC. So then I said, well, here is my way to test my dates, because according to me, the old books are before 2400. So there should be no reference to spokes in the old books. There should be only in the new books. So I examined, and yes, all the references to spoked wheels are in the new books only and not in the old books. Now, this is just one word. But then, they were saying that although, see, in India, we don't have dated uh, documents before the Ashoka pillars. But in West Asia, we have the Mitanni documents. The Mitanni people spoke an Indo-Aryan language very close to Sanskrit. In fact, it was a derived form of Sanskrit, means the Mitanni kings, their ancestors spoke Vedic. And they had already forgotten, they were speaking the local language, but they had retained their ancestral personal names and certain words like horse colors connected with horse racing and horses. And only one word, money, money for pearls or jewels or beads. Now, when I examined all the Mitanni data again on this basis of old books and new books, I found that all those things are found only in the new books. And then I examined the Avesta. The Avesta Indo-Iranian is what they always talk about. So there are many common things in the Rigveda and the Avesta. Now again I examined all the data in the Avesta. Again I found that the Avestan evidence is common with the new books only. So what does this prove? See, according to their theory, all these people, the ancestors of the Vedic, Iranian, and Mitanni people came from the steppes and settled in Central Asia. And then they separated into three different groups and came into three different directions. So whatever is common among them has to be pre-Rigvedic because the Rigveda was composed after they came into India. But we find that it is the second part of the Rigveda with which it is common. The first part is completely different. And this is the very central aspect of analyzing Rigvedic history. It is not there in the second book. I did it in my third book in 2008, and recently I have done it in my blogs. I have gone even more into detail. And right now, I have written 2 articles, and another one I will be putting up in 15 days, in which I have taken all the new words in the new Rigveda, new books. And they cover, there are 7,000 words, covering almost 98% of the hymns in the new books and 0 hymns in the old books. They're completely missing in the old books. So what does this show? That the old books of the Rigveda belong to a very, very much earlier age, long before the Mitanni, long before the Iranians. And it is the new books which have that common period from which they separated. Okay? And the geography of those old books is actually within India. It is in Haryana, centered in Haryana. And there is the historical description in the Rigveda of how the Vedic people migrated, spread out or expanded westwards, driving out the Iranians, Armenians, Albanians, and Greeks, the ancestors. It is all actually there in the Rigveda. I have given it all in my books. So this common thing is after the new books, all these people migrated outwards. So you see, this now, since the Mitanni people are already found in 1800 BC, they are found in West Asia. So if they had gone from India, they must have gone well before 2000 BC. And when they went, what was going on in India? It was the new period of the Rigveda. That is, the 5 new books were being composed. And the old books had long ago become old. So you see, the old books which are situated in Haryana go long back before 3000 BC. And it is on the basis of this recorded data of the Mitanni, which is, carbon dated. It is 1450, 1500 BC. And already, as Witzel and various other Western scholars have pointed out, it is an ancestral culture that they are reflecting. So the Mitanni people, what you see in 1500 BC is the culture of their ancestors. And their ancestors had left from India at a time when the new Rigveda was being composed. So you see, this is why the Rigveda is important, because it, and now so many other questions which arise. Every time you use this touchstone of the 5 old books and the 5 new books, you find that you get the answer for that historical mystery. So you see, that is why the Rigveda is very important. It is the one thing which answers everything else.
So who were the composers of Rigveda, and what were their geography?
Yeah. See, now actually we have two paradigms in front of us. One is the Indo-European paradigm, according to which there were these Indo-Europeans who were divided into 12 branches. And two of those branches, Indo-Aryans and Iranians, came from the steppes to Central Asia. Then they came to India and Iran. And the Indo-Aryans, one branch out of 12, composed the Rigveda. However, our Indian Puranas give us a different paradigm. They give us a vague paradigm of an ancestral king called Manu Vaivaswat who had many sons and descendants. And although there are all kinds of, like if you see the Bible, you know, the sons of Adam and Eve and their children and their descendants, all kinds of mythical names come into it. But if you sift out all that, you find that in the Puranas there are only two main branches which are the focus of the history. That is the what is called the solar dynasty or the Ikshvakus, and the lunar dynasty or the Aidas, which includes, you know, Yadavas, Purus, Anus, Druhyus, and Turvashus. Now, these are the people whom you find in the Rigveda. Even the Ikshvakus are not there because the Ikshvakus were in the east. So you see the Vedic people, as I showed from my very first book in 93, and each book is producing more and more evidence of it, that according to this paradigm, the Vedic people whom they call Indo-Aryans, the Vedic Indo-Aryans, they are the Purus, one branch of the lunar branch, one sub-branch of the lunar. And the other four sub-branches, the Anus, Druhyus, especially the two which were to the west, they are the ones which migrated out and became the 11 other branches which are found outside India. So you see, all that 12 branches paradigm is fitted into three of the Aida or lunar branches of our traditional history. And it is all proved because the amount of data and proof that I have given, linguistic and textual, is, I mean, no one can really challenge it. And that's why no one really dares to challenge it now. They just, you know, accuse me, make personal remarks about me being a bank employee, I don't know Greek and Latin, as if that has anything. What they have to examine what I've written and show that it is wrong. But they ignore everything and just indulge in personal attacks. So you see, this is the main thing. So first thing you have to recognize is, you know, even in India, people have this obsession to say Vedic people are the ancestors of the whole world, or if not that, at least of the whole of India. But they were not. They were the people of Haryana, Western Uttar Pradesh, or that region, and they comprised the Rigveda, and then the culture spread all over India. The culture spread does not mean they invaded the rest of India, because see, Buddhism and Jainism spread from Bihar. That didn't mean the Buddhists and Jainists conquered the whole rest of India. You see, culture spreads, and India was one unit, and culture spread in all directions. So what we have today called Hinduism is not Vedic culture. Vedic culture is, you know, the Vedic hymns, the yajna, and various other Vedic rituals. But other things like Murti Puja, temple worship was already there in India, in the South India. Then tantric rituals were already there in Bengal and the East. And, you know, philosophies. You see all the philosophies that are developed in India. You find that originally they all centered around Bihar. You know, Buddhism originated there, Jainism originated there, Charvakas originated there. In the Upanishads, all the discussions take place in the courts of Janaka, who was in Bihar. And so you see, what we have today is not derived from the Vedas. It is a complete Indian religion covering all the aspects of India. So once you realize that, and you leave that obsession of, you know, trying to show everything came from the Vedas, then only you can solve Vedic history or any historical question, or even the problem of Hindu identity. So that is the answer. I mean, that the Purus were the Vedic Aryans, the other people were others. They were the Indo-Europeans who went out. They were the other people of India who contributed to Hinduism in other different ways.
What is the historical identity of Vedic Aryan? Are they only branch of Aryans, or we have more Aryans?
See, Aryans means they are the Purus. Now, who has given them the name Aryans? You know, it was these Europeans who, when they discovered, you know, when they came to India, they discovered that the North Indian languages are related to the European languages and to Iranian languages. And it is so, you know, many people deny it, but it is so clear. Like I have given examples. I don't know if you have seen it, but I'll give them now. Like you say, Pitar, Matar, Bhratar, Swasar, Sunu, Duhitar. It's Pidar, Madar, Biradar, Khosar, Hunu, and Dukhtar in Iranian. And of course, father, mother, brother, son, daughter, sister, son, daughter in English. You see, in Sanskrit, you say Vayam, Yuyam. For English, we and you. Is there any North Indian languages which uses these words today? So English is so much more similar to Sanskrit in these two words. And Sanskrit has two more words for we and you, nas and vas. And that is the Latin words nos and vos. So you see, Sanskrit has connections with the Western world, which you simply cannot deny. I'll give you an example. Like, let us take the words मैं हूं, तू है, वो है. Okay, first, second, third person. हूं, है. In Marathi, it is आहे, ahes, ahe. In Konkani, it is assa, assa. In Gujarati, it is chu, che. You see, you can make out somehow that they're related, but they are so distinct from each other. But do you know what is the Sanskrit words? Asmi, asi, asti. And what is the Russian? Esmi, esi, esti. What is Lithuanian? Esmi, esi, esti. What is Avestan? Ahmi, ahi, asti. What is Greek? Emi, esi, esti. You see, it's like they are like dialects of one language, although they are, from 5,000 years to the present day. Like Lithuanian and Russian are present day languages spoken in Eastern Europe. Sanskrit is an ancient language of India. Hittite was an ancient language of West Asia. Greek was an ancient language of Southeastern Europe. And yet, these three words, now, we can borrow words from other languages. Like when we are talking Hindi, Marathi, we use so many English words. So many, or even whatever language we are talking, we use from words from other languages well known to us. But have you ever known anyone to borrow the personal pronouns or to borrow words like I am, you are? Do you say मैं am, tu is, he is? You don't. You cannot say that because you cannot use these forms in another language. So it is not that those languages have borrowed the Sanskrit word that related to Sanskrit. So you see, that is the degree of similarity. Now, when the Europeans discovered this, what do they call? They couldn't understand, because between India and Europe, there are all these Turkish, Arabic, and other languages which are completely different. So after crossing all those languages, they came to India and they found so similar languages, so closely related. So it was a mystery to them. First, many of them accepted that our ancestors must have come from here because this is an ancient civilization. But then various factors, I won't go into them, and finally they arrived at the central area in the steppes as the original home from where these people spread out. And after that, they invented all these stories of Aryan invasion, which is not recorded anywhere before the Europeans invented this theory. No one had any such idea. So what name do they give to this language family? So, the Germans called it Indo-Germanish. And people also called it Indo-European, but originally they called it Aryan, because the Rigvedic people refer to themselves as Aryan. The Avestan people refer to themselves as Arya. And then they also felt that the Irish, Ire, and various other words also show similar self-reference. But the thing is that self-reference is not based on language. If you see the works of linguists, they have pointed out that the original Indo-European word from which Arya, etc. came, it means belonging to our community. Community, not language. Like I always give the example of my mother tongue, Konkani. In Karnataka, we have different Saraswat groups. Now, we have a word, Amchigalo, which means belonging to my community. Now, I am a Chitrapur Saraswat. There is a Gaud Saraswat. He also says Amchigalo. But when he says it, he means a Gaud Saraswat. When I say it, I mean a Chitrapur Saraswat, originally. Now, with more cosmopolitanism, we use the word for each other also. But originally, it was like that. So this is how the Purus called themselves Arya, means belonging to our community. He is an Arya, means he belongs to my community. He's an Arya. And that other person was a Dasa, who does not belong into the Purus. So the Iranians were Dasas. Whereas in the Avesta, the Iranians called themselves Arya, means belonging to a community. And those who did not belong to their Iranian community were Tuiryas. That is Arya and Tuirya, like Arya and Dasa. So you see, the self-appellation was Arya everywhere, and the appellation for other people, including other Indo-European speakers, was different. Dasa, Tuirya, whatever. So Arya does not mean language. So it was a word which was wrongly used. And after it was grossly misused in the racial sense by the Nazis, it became a bad word, so to say, uh, and a politically unwanted word. So after that, they started using the word Indo-European only, and they use the word Aryan only for the Iranian and Indo-Aryan branches, because the Rigveda and Avesta use that word. But it has nothing to do with language. So you see, all the others, Yadavas, Anus, Druyus, were also Indo-Europeans. In the Rigveda, the word Arya is used only for Purus because it was a Puru text. I've shown that in very great detail, giving all the references and all that in my books.
Rigveda has been a subject of historical study for nearly 2 centuries. Why do you think Western scholars have failed to examine the actual information of Rigveda?
They have failed to examine all this data in the Rigveda because, they were looking, and, people are in the habit of condemning the classical Indological scholars. I don't blame them. Yes, they made countless mistakes, and we can point them out. But they made those mistakes because they were, looking at it through a certain, blinkers or certain glasses or lenses. They believed honestly that the Aryans had come from outside, and so they interpreted everything like that. Everything they, even when there was nothing connection, everyone who fought with the Aryans were non-Aryans. Even if their names were like, it's, they say that in the Ramayana, Rama was an Aryan, and Kumbhakarna, Ravana, etc. were Dravidians. But Kumbhakarna, Ravana are Sanskrit names. They're not Dravidian names. So you start with a linguistic criterion of Aryan and Dravidian and all that, and then you just use it indiscriminately for even people who have Aryan names or Sanskrit names. So it becomes a purely political or a very scholarly use of the word. So that is how the Western scholars examined it. And, they also used to have arguments among themselves. And once, you actually examine the Rigveda from the point of view which I have done, by looking at its different layers, the old books, new books, etc., then everything comes into focus. What the Western scholars did was, they treated it as one text, although they knew that it covered a long period of composition. So, they said things like, the Rigveda mentions Ganga and Yamuna only once or twice, but it mentions all the tiny rivers of Afghanistan. But when you look, you see Ganga, Yamuna are mentioned right from the oldest books to the last books, whereas the Western tributaries of the Indus are mentioned only in the last books after these people had expanded westwards. So when you divide the Rigveda and look at it chronologically, then you realize, now as I said, what I'm doing now, which I'll be putting up in 15 days, I'm providing a complete, because I think that any discussion on the Rigveda or Indo-European history is meaningless if you don't first realize two things. One is that the Vedic people were not ancestral to everyone. They were one group of people of the Northwest. And secondly, that, the Rigveda is, what shall we say? It is it is divided into two parts, and you have to examine it very carefully to see what is new, old, and that is the thing. So, what happened was that the Western scholars did not do all this. But I believe that if they were present, because whenever any new facts were presented to them, they used to seriously consider it. That what has happened now in modern times is it has become a political issue. I mean, the Indologists are accused of being racist, but I don't think that affected their studies. What affected their studies was their personal prejudices, which the glasses that they were wearing. But actually, in today's world, you see people talking absolute rubbish. From anything they decide anything. Like Panis, they say, are non-Aryans. But then you find Panis in Greek mythology, Pan. You find it in Germanic mythology, the Vanir. And I have shown in my second book, this particular book we are discussing now, the second one. In that, there is a chapter, Sarma and the Panis. where I've shown how Hermes and Pan and Sarma and the Panis and the Vanir are all identical. All their features are same. You can see the connections. So you see, if you just keep on take a theory and then just blindly keep classifying everything according to that, it does not. You have to compare and understand. So which is what the Europeans did not do, and which is what the present day Western scholars refuse to do, because they have spent 40, 50 years writing things, and they are not likely to say, yes, I know I was wrong, whatever I wrote was wrong, now I will have to rethink it. They're too old, and they have too much reputation and these things to preserve. So they will not do it. So I think we'll have to wait for another 10, 15, 20 years for new scholars to come up, more open-minded scholars. However, there is a problem, because where will those open-minded scholars come from? The Westerners are completely insulated from what studies we are doing, and the Indians have their own prejudices. They want to show all kinds of things. Like, as I said, they want to show Vedic people are the ancestors of everyone. They want to show that the Vedas go back 15, 20,000 years. And when you do all that, see, you go into the world of fantasy and you cannot really analyze. So while that is happening, I'm not sure exactly how long it will take for the right view to be accepted. But we can just prepare all the material and keep it. Someday someone will understand that.
What are the challenges with the Michael Witzel's interpretation of Rigveda?
Okay, no, Michael Witzel, what he does is he just tries to search out for non-Aryans. Everything he has tried to show how many people are non-Aryans in the Rigveda. And that includes, in one place he accepts that Paktas are the Pakhtuns and Parshwas are the Persians. And then in another place he says, no, they are non-Aryans. And when he understands the implications of what he's saying, he backs out. And that is his biggest problem. Like I have shown in my books, I've given all his quotations where he says that the Saraswati is the Ghaggar Hakra of Haryana. And once the satellite imagery established that the Saraswati dried up in 1900 BC, and therefore the Rigveda must have been much older, and that all the Indus sites, there's a greater concentration of Indus sites on the beds of the Saraswati. This became apparent, say, 25, 30 years ago. And after that, suddenly, I have in my book, I have given a long list of all the Western scholars, including Witzel, who have accepted that Saraswati was the Ghaggar Hakra. And now suddenly they're saying, no, Saraswati is in Afghanistan, and it is the modern Hindu fanatics of India who are saying it is the Ghaggar Hakra. That means all these scholars up till now were Hindu fanatics, including Witzel until 15 years ago. So you see, there is no honesty. I say, if there is honesty in any debate, you can move forward. If people say something yesterday and then again they change, like we know in any, I don't know whether I should be bringing direct politics into this, but there is this Ayodhya thing. Now, B.P. Lal was always admired and respected in the West as a great archaeologist. But the moment he said something about Ayodhya, he became a villain. And that is what is happening. Means, in fact, now what is going on in the West, West is supposed to have defeated communism, but actually it has been taken over ideological by communism, because all the Westists are now leftists, wokists, who have something, if anyone goes against some idea which they hold as dogma, then they are boycotted, persecuted, and trolled everywhere. So that is the kind of thing which is going on. So what has happened is that Witzel has the support of all these people, because most of these people don't want Indian history to be rewritten. And as I said, his interpretations are based on, every time in my books, I don't know if perhaps I should compile all of them together in one place, but everywhere I have pointed out, this is what Witzel says. And then I have shown how it is. Like, for example, he says, that there are many Indian plants and animals. Now, if the Indo-European branches had gone from India, they would have taken those names with them. But then I said, but those people went 5,000 years ago from the northwest, whereas the Romani or Gypsy people went from deep inside India 1,000 years ago. They have also not preserved a single name for any Indian plant animal. So does that mean they also didn't go from India? So you see that they don't have to have logic behind what they say. It is just, I'm sitting on the throne, what I say is law. And that is his biggest problem. And of all the countless fans of his who just say, see, whatever you write, it has to be recognized in a peer-reviewed paper. But who are peer reviewers? They're the same people, a small coterie of people who review each other's papers and clap each other on the back. It's a mutual admiration society. So if they say 2 plus 2 is 5, and each of them says, yes, yes, it's right, does that make it right? So no one is willing to, look at the facts. And this is Michael Witzel's biggest problem. As I said, now he's, I believe, above 80. We cannot expect him to reform himself now, but at least his fans should.
Was there any change in the ethnic composition of the folks during the time period when it is claimed that the Aryan invasion happened?
Now, they have produced what they call genetic evidence showing that some steppe elements entered India. But where did they enter India? The earliest evidence they have is in the Swat Valley, 1100 BC, according to which by that time, according to them, the Rigveda was already fully composed. And Swat is right in the path from Central Asia to northernmost part of Pakistan. And the Rigveda was composed far to the south of it. So if in 1000 BC, 1100 BC to 100 BC, you find these steppe elements in the northernmost part, then did they go back in time and compose the Rigveda 500, 600, 700 years before that to the south? So you see, there is no logic in it. But people say, oh, they have found steppe elements. So yes, there are constantly people are changing. Now, again, it may seem I'm being a bit personal because then if I give something, you can understand. Now, we are Saraswats. We are supposed to come down from Kashmir 1000 years ago. Do I look like a Kashmiri? Do you think I am? Because we came down, we brought that culture with us and then we mixed. See, no one has remained pure. Whatever anyone says, Gotra and this and that. Everyone has mixed with local people. We look like Maharashtrians, we look like Karnataka people, but we speak a language which came from the north. We use words and phrases. And I have written an article on Konkani. Certain features which are there in the Vedic language, like tonal system, then inflectional grammar, inflectional etymology, it is not found in any other Indian language. It is found in Konkani. And certain of the words, like, the word for dog, in all the Indian language, it is kutta, from the Sanskrit word kukura, kutta, kutra. In Sanskrit, in the Rigveda, kukura is not there. The word is shwan or shuna. And that is found in all the 12 branches, that word. And in Konkani, we say sune. In the Kashmir area, they say hunu. So you see that link is there. But we are not Kashmiris. Yes, the language came from there. We came from there bringing the language. But that Kashmiri element in my blood may be 1% or less also. So constantly changes are taking place. From the ethnic composition, you cannot judge languages and things. Like Buddhists, Chinese people are Buddhists. Do they have Indian DNA? Are they Indians? Do they have Indian blood? Is there genetic mixture of Indians with Chinese people? Or Koreans or Mongols or Japanese for that matter? So people used to, anything which people present with an air of scientific knowledge, other people blindly accept it. They don't pause to think. I mean, languages move from today in America. There are people, Native Americans, what we would call Red Indian or indigenous Americans, who know only English or Spanish. They don't know any other original ancestral Indian language. There are Black people whose ancestors were brought from Africa. They know only English or Spanish or French. They don't know any African language. So that is how changes take place. There, it is not necessary that language and race have any connections. How these things change place are a matter of different historical events, which cannot be calculated and quantified and shown by equations. So yes, there were all kinds of changes must have been constantly taking place. For that we can rely on genetic evidence when you really produce genetic evidence to that effect. Not when you just I am a scholar, so believe me. Not that kind of attitude. When you actually give that, we'll accept it. But that has nothing to do with the languages that we speak.
How is the usage of same word for will shed lights into migration of Indo-Europeans.
Now, this is very important because, wheeled vehicles came into being somewhere around 3000 BC, although also the use of copper. Now, these are words for which in distant Indo-European languages you find common elements. So what it proves is that in 3000 BC, all the 12 branches were together in one place when copper and wheeled vehicles came into their knowledge. So they had a common word for them, and all the descendant branches, wherever they have gone, they have that common word. So you see, it provides us with that date of 3000 BC when all the languages, all the 12 branches were together. And when you examine the Mitanni evidence, which, as I said, which shows that the Mitanni ancestors left India after 2400 BC, and the old books, which are situated exclusively in Haryana, in these old books, all the rivers have purely Indo-Aryan names. They don't have any other name. All the animals have purely Indo-Aryan names. There is not a single person who can be identified as a non-Aryan, whether a Dravidian or an Austric or a Semitic or a Sumerian or a Chinese or anything. All are Indo-Aryans in it. All the words are Indo-Aryan. Only people like Witzel, he just makes up things. Like he says, all words beginning with ki and ku, because somewhere in some Austric language, there are words beginning with ki and ku. So all Vedic words beginning with ki and ku are borrowed from Munda, even if they are not there in the Munda languages. No, somewhere it was borrowed. That time there must have been a Munda language which had those words and they are borrowed. So just take it from me. But I said, the Mitanni people, the famous book of the Mitanni is a book on horse racing containing all these Sanskrit words. And it was written by a person named Kikuli. Now, Ki, his name begins with Ki. Was he also Munda who went from India? Then certainly we can accept that. Means in 3000 BC, obviously, Vedic people are so much a part of India that they must have been influenced by Munda people, and they took that word right up till West Asia, Syria, Iraq, the Mitanni kingdom. So you see, when they make these arguments, just saying this word is non-Aryan, and he says, he makes up rules, saying that our Indo-European word should be only like this. And if it has a slight difference, it means it is not Indo-European. Then what is it? Where is it? So you don't have to show some other thing. You just have to make up a rule and say that it's not Indo-European. So it must be a non-Aryan word borrowed by the Aryans when they entered India. A totally hypothetical story from A to Z.
Saraswati dried up in 1900 BC. So Rigveda must go beyond that. How does that help the debate between migration versus indigenous population?
I think that also I have answered that it dried up in 1900 BC. And this, as I said, I have given quotations from Witzel saying that the Saraswati was the Ghaggarakra. In that, there are quotations where he himself gives this evidence that it had dried up in 1900 BC, which proves that the hymns which quote them must be old. But even that time, they never suspected that an out-of-India theory would come up, which would get so much force. So they just threw it around, showing like he denies that there are any Dravidian words in the Rigveda, because his theory is that there were only Munda words, whereas many of the other Western scholars say there were Dravidian words. So they can afford to fight among themselves on these issues as long as there is no Indian side, which they have to deal with. But now there is this out of India theory which has come up, and so now there is a unity between them. What they want to, show is that anything but Indo-Aryan. It may be Dravidian, it may be Austric, it may be some language X, hypothetical language X, which is not recorded anywhere, but it is not Indo-Aryan. That is what they're saying. So in that same way, Saraswati tied up what he said 25 years ago. Now he just simply denies it, and no one will ask him why or how. He'll just quote his present quotations and ignore his earlier quotations if they want to show what he's saying is right.
What are the flaws in the linguistic case for South Russian homeland and Anatolian homeland?
Okay, the flaws are, I have given a talk, and I have also written an article. The fact is, whatever, like, the only thing is that if you say Sanskrit was the original Proto-Indo-European language, then you find all kinds of linguistic flaws in that distinct. So what they say is that there was a Proto-Indo-European language, and many people don't like to believe that Vedic language was not the first language which was spoken by man. They want to believe that no, it was the earliest. It cannot have had an ancestral language. So they just refuse to accept it. So then they have this nice straw man to fight, Indians will say, no, no, Vedic is the original. They say, no, no, and they'll show the linguistic case to show that Vedic can't be the original language. But there is no case at all to show that Proto-Indo-European could not have been spoken in India. And whatever, like I'll give you an example. Like Witzel says, there are words for wolf and bear in all the Indo-European languages. Now, wolf and bear are northern languages for spoken animals found in the temperate regions. So it cannot be that they went from India. So Indians, when we use the word for wolf and bear, which are related to the European words, it is because we came from there. But the thing is, wolves are found in India. Like when Rudyard Kipling wrote the Jungle Book about Mowgli and the wolves, he was talking about Indian wolves, not about British or German wolves. And as for bears, there are 8 species of bears in the world. Only one is found in Europe and one is found in the Arctic, that is the polar bear. The brown bear is found in Europe. In India, you find the brown bear, the black bear, the spectacled bear, and the sloth bear. And to the north in Tibet, you find the panda bear. So 5 of the bears in the world are in India. So on what basis do you say the word bear proves that we came from there? And another thing is that the common word rickshaw, from which you get all the words, arctos, ursus, Latin arctos, Greek arctos, Latin ursus, all these words, Sanskrit rickshaw. Now, all these words, in all the other languages, there is no etymology. You don't know where that word came from. Whereas in Sanskrit, that word is part of a root from which you get words like raksha, rakshana, rakshasa, riksha. So it is very much an Indian word, which those people are using. We are not using a Latin, Greek, or any other word. So whether it is linguistically or, zoologically, India is the home of the Indo-European bear. So, but when they use it, no one, like they say, ice and snow. There is no ice. We came from the land of ice and snow. But we don't know about ice and snow because we came from there. We have ice and snow in the Himalayas. And in the Rigveda, you see that ice and snow are mentioned only in the last parts of the Rigveda, when the Rigvedic people have spread out to the north, to Central Asia and the northern parts of Pakistan. They are not mentioned in the earlier parts. So whatever arguments they give, like another argument they give is, that there are common words in Indo-Iranian on the one hand and Uralic on the other. Now, Uralic is the Finnish and Hungarian languages of Eastern Europe. So they say there are common words found in Indo-Iranian, and this proves that Indo-Iranian came from Eastern Europe. Now, the thing is that all these words are Indo-Iranian words borrowed by Uralic. There is not a single Uralic word. All the scholars in all these years have not been able to find a single word, Uralic word, which is found in Indo-Aryan or Iranian. All the words, and they are they are words, very, very important words in human civilization, which are used in the Uralic. I've given the list of those words in my book, not my own list, which the Western scholars themselves have given. And every single one of them is Indo-Iranian words borrowed by Uralic. Now, where does this situation take place? Does this prove that we came from there? What does it show? Like, for example, now in all our Indian languages, we use so many Arabic words, We say dunya, mohabbat, and this and that, and all kinds of things. Istemal kiya. And now, where do all these words come from? Did we come from Arabia? Why do we have them? Because the Arabs came here and they brought those words which we accepted. And the Arabs who came here, they also accepted Indian words. But they did not take those words back with them because they settled here only. So in Arabia, you don't find Indian words. In India, you find Arabic words. Now, throughout Southeast Asia, you find Sanskrit words in Malay language, in the Balinese and Javanese languages, in Burmese, Thai, Cambodian, Vietnamese. You find Sanskrit words. But in Sanskrit, you don't find a single Burmese, Thai, Cambodian, Vietnamese word. Why? Because Sanskrit people had gone to Southeast Asia, and there was an interchange of words. but they did not come back bringing those words with them. They settled there. Now Europeans came, they ruled over India. So we borrowed many words from them. But they also borrowed words from us. They went back and they wrote books in which they used those words. Colonial books, colonial writers. And therefore those Indian words have reached there. Otherwise they wouldn't have reached there. So you see, all this is, what does this prove? This proves that it is not that Indo-Iranians came from Eastern Europe, but that one group of Indians from India went to Eastern Europe and settled there, and now they're extinct. Like, do you find Sanskrit speakers in Southeast Asia? Do you find Arabic speakers in India? So you don't find Sanskrit speakers in Eastern Europe because they have merged into the local people. The Mitanni speaking in Sanskrit language, they are not there anymore. So you see, people merge into the local population if they are small in number. But there is an exchange of words. And that exchange is only recorded by the languages which remain. So the Finnish and Hungarian languages remain, and they give the evidence of this interaction. Whereas in India and Iran, you don't find any Uralic words. And another surprising thing is one of the words borrowed by Uralic is the word for the Bactrian camel. Now, Bactrian camel is Central Asia. So if Indo-Iranians came from Eastern Europe, did they stop at Central Asia, borrow this word, then go back and tell the Uralic people, see, we've got a new word for you, start using it and then come back? Obviously, it means that the movement was from India through Central Asia to Eastern Europe. And yet, all these scholars very regularly, quote this argument. And people say, yes, that scholar is saying so, 2 plus 2 must be equal to 5. So that is the big problem. Now, as I said, there are many flaws. I have given them all. Like another thing is, they say that original Indo-European languages had R and L. Some words had R, some words had L. But in Iranian Mitanni and in the original Rigveda, only R remains. L is not there. And L comes into the Rigveda after it expanded eastwards from the Eastern languages. Now, what does this prove? That this entity of Indo-Iranian, which they are placing in Central Asia, so that had only R, according to them. And L was before that when they were in the West. But actually, you find that L inside India, in the East. So what does that show? That it was from inside India that they went there, and then they lost the L and had only R in the Northwest. You see, every single argument, and the biggest argument that I've given in my article on the elephant and the Indo-European homeland is that there are many animal words which are common and which are found only in India. But you can say, oh, they are also found in Central Asia, they're also found in West Asia, like leopard and things like that. But elephant is found only in India and Southeast Asia and in Africa. And India is the only Indo-European speaking territory which has this animal. And there is a common word for elephant, which is found in the Rigveda, Ibha. It is found in Greek, Alepha. It is found in Hittite, Lahapa. And it is found in Latin, Ebur. And all of them have been, can be traced to a common form. Now that common form is Ribha. Ribha, from which you get Ibha. Like, Krishna becomes Kisna. So like that, Ribha becomes Ibha, which means that already the word was so old in the Rigveda that in the Rigveda you already have a Prakritic form of the word. But the languages which went out, they retained that original form with the R or L alternate. So they have Alepha, Lapa, Ebur. And now why Ebur? Why is R at the end? The word crocodile. Crocodile. And in the Latin language, it is cocodrillo. The R has shifted back. So you see the same thing. The original word rebu or erbu has become ebur. The R has shifted back. So everywhere you get this ribha. Now what is ribha? Is it a word which has no etymology? In Sanskrit, the root ribha or labha means to grasp with the hand. And what is the name for elephant? Hastin, because it has a hand. So ribha also means exactly the same thing. Now, these people actually say, see, they use a word hastin, which means that it was some new animal to them. So it was new that that animal had a hand like trunk. That is why they gave it the name hastin. But this common word is also from that same root, ribha, which means grasping. But then, And they can have no answer. They say, no, they must have borrowed these words from somewhere else. But from where? Means Sanskrit borrowed it from somewhere. Hittite borrowed it from somewhere. Greek borrowed it from somewhere. Latin borrowed it from somewhere else. And no other language in the world has a record of this word being there. So from whom did they borrow it? From Martians? So you see, everything is based on faith and authority and power. And as I said, no logic, no honesty. Until these two things come into the debate, it is difficult.
What are the future projects that you are currently working on?
As I said, the book which I'm going to write in 15 days, I'll put it up. I have already given that, but in that, I just give the hymn and verse numbers where the new words are found. I didn't give exactly which word is found in which verse. So now I have, in the last 1 month, I've been sitting laboriously from my list, copying out the word in that this thing and all, and I'll finish it and I'll put it up. And when you see, there's such a striking difference between the old Rigveda and the new Rigveda. The old Rigveda meaning books 5, 4, 3, 6, 3, 7, 4, 2, and new Rigveda being 5, 1, 8, 9, 10. And there is another factor in this. In the 5 old books, the Western scholars, right from Oldenburg to Witzel to Proferus, they have identified a small group of hymns in each of the old books, which they say have been influenced by new words. Now, these new words are found in those particular hymns, which we call redacted hymns. They are not found in the rest of the old books. They are only found in those few handful of hymns, which these people have identified as influenced by new words, which were modified afterwards. So it is very clear that you find these words only in the 5 new books, and in the old books you find it only in those few handful of hymns which the Western scholars have themselves identified as new or redacted or modified hymns. So I think this actually, when I started writing on my first book, I read the Vedic age history culture of the Indian people, Bhavan's Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan publication. They have published a series of history of India. So the first book was the Vedic age. So in that, Pusalkar, I think, mentioned that certain words are old, certain words are new. And ever since then, I was very intrigued. What are these new words? Who has made a study of this? I searched everywhere. No one has done it. There is one scholar called Edward Hopkins, who died more than 100 years ago. He had done a book on Mandala 8. He has shown how and he himself has said, although he is a believer in the Aryan invasion, because that, as I said, they were wearing those glasses. But he himself has said that these words prove that the Avesta is on contemporaneous with the newer parts of the Rigveda. But no one else took up that issue. No one went deeply into it. So I have finally gone into it now in extreme detail. I will be presenting it. And it is very important. I'll give you one word, for example. And it is such a common word, everyone knows this word. Like, what is the word for night? Ratri. It is there in all the Indian languages. You say Ratri, Ratra, whatever. It is there in all the Tamil and even Tamil. There was a film Navaratri, with 7 roles of Shivaji Ganeshan, 9 roles, in which it was called Navaratri. The festival is called Navaratri. So Ratri is a very common word. All the South Indian languages use it. In Kannada and Telugu, it has replaced the original word. In Tamil and Telugu, they still have words like Iravu and all that for night. But even in all other Southeast Asian or whichever other languages have been influenced by Sanskrit, Tibetan or other Buddhist texts outside, they all use that word Ratri. But this word is not found in any of the other 11 branches. This is a new word. In the Rigveda, it is found only 7, 8 times, only in the newest parts. And before that, throughout the Rigveda, there are 2 words for night. One is Kshap. Now, Kshap is found only in 2 branches, in Vedic and in Iranian. Even today, in Persian, for night, you say Shab, Shabnam, Shabbe Barat, Shabba Khair. This Shab, which is used in Urdu, it means night. It is the Persian word. And in the Avesta, it is Kshap, exactly like the Rigveda. Kshap in Rigveda, Kshap in Avesta. And from Avesta, it has become Shab in modern Persian. It is not found in the other 10 branches. And the word night, throughout the Rigveda, the word is Nakt. It is found once in the Avesta as Naktorusa. the coming of dawn, when night is about to end. Otherwise, they use the word kshap only. And in all the other branches, the word is nakt, night, noctis, nasht. So in the Rigveda, in Sanskrit, in our tradition, you find all these three stages, which they call Proto-Indo-European, Proto-Indo-Iranian, and purely Indo-Aryan. So this word, I think, is a representative word. It shows, how Rigveda is the root of studying Indo-European history and understanding the division. Any question which comes up now, you find that it is answered by this new and old business. Like I told you about the spoked wheels thing. Anything else that Mittani names, whatever historical question is there about Indo-European or Indo-Iranian or Vedic history, it is answered. When you examine the Rigveda on the basis of this old Rigveda and new Rigveda, it is answered. So that is the thing I'm concentrating on the moment. Because otherwise you can just argue with trolls and hecklers, and it goes on and on and on, becoming a abuse, each abusing each other, and there's no sense left in it. And I'm just a bank employee. So ultimately, that is the final thing they throw on my face. You're a bank employee, you don't know. That is it. So I'll just do my work and wait for the future to recognize it.
So, thanks, sir, for going into details and explaining your research and how the division of Rigveda into modern and old and new Rigveda matters a lot in understanding how the uh, migration or how this debate, which has been ranging for about a couple of centuries, which goes on, how it can be settled. Uh, so, for instance, one of the questions which we had sent is that wheel was, I was just reading and then found that in Slovenia or Slovakia, there was a wheel which was found in its capital some 5,500 BC.
Yeah.
So I was very inquisitive. How does that uh, tie up to the research you have done? Like, for instance, the words of wheels, you're talking about the same word for wheel, right? So, point is that how does that tie up to the linguistics?
What is found in 5500 BC?
So, if you actually look at the document we have sent, so a wheel was found in Slovakia in 5200 BC.
See, whatever is found in whatever period, until you find some written record which shows what language they were speaking,
Okay.
you cannot identify. As I said, maybe there are people somewhere who came into India. Maybe they are part of my ancestor. Maybe, as I wrote in one of my articles, maybe if you analyze my DNA, you'll find I'm 50% Eskimo and 50% Australian Aboriginal. It is possible. But my language has not come from Australia or from the Eskimo areas. My language is Indian. So you see, what comes from where is totally irrelevant. Like, people are usually not aware. They, in a different context. I have given the example of, there was a film Sampurna Ramayan, in which they showed after Sita has been kidnapped, she's in the Ashokan. A fruit falls and breaks, and she looks into it and she sees Ram, and that is Ramphal. And here Rama sees a fruit which breaks open, and he sees Sita, that is Sitafal. That was put in that film. But no one knew, neither the film producer, director, writer, nor the audience, that Sitafal and Ramphal are fruits which came from America. They were brought by the Portuguese, so they couldn't have been there at the time of Rama. So you see, people are not aware. Whatever is there in their present time, they judge everything by that standard. That is one thing. And another thing is they don't realize that language and other things are not connected in any way. See, whatever goes abroad, it leaves evidence in language. Anything like chess originated in India. How do you know that? Because all the languages, wherever the chess was played in different forms, that name has come from the Sanskrit name Chaturang. In Vietnam, it was known as Chayutrang. In Arabia, it was known as Shatranj. In Mongolia, it was known as Shatara. All came from Chaturang. And so that is linguistic evidence. Then there was textual evidence, which shows because all of them accepted, that Persian Arabs, they said that this is an Indian game that we are playing. It is actually recorded there. But could any geneticist, by examining either Chinese or Mongolian or Vietnamese or Arab DNA, could he have proved that chess came from India? You see, certain things have no connection with genetics. Yes, genetics is a very great science, but it does not prove anything about anything. It does not prove anything about language. Language can be proved only from textual and linguistic evidence, and if it is supported by archaeology, and that archaeology gets value only when there is some evidence of the language which is spoken there. We have all kinds of sites in India, the Indus sites, we are in Central Asia, which people claim are or are not Indo-European. But as there is no written this thing there, it is just speculation and wishful thinking. Whatever you are inclined to believe, you will believe. Until something is found in a particular language, you cannot. Now we know the Mitanni are Indo-Europeans. It was discovered only in the beginning of the last century that the Mitanni were Indo-Aryans. Before that, no one knew about it. So no one even speculated. But here people are speculating about which archaeological site is Indo-Aryan and Indo-European. When did they realize those Mitanni people were Indo-Aryans? When they discovered those written texts. The Hittites, all the carvings show them, they have Mongolian features. How could they have come from the steppes? Obviously, they came from Central Asia. After migrating from India, they settled there for a long time and they entered Turkey. So in all the carvings in West Asia, sculptures where the Hittites are shown, they have Mongoloid features, Mongolian features. And it's given in great detail. I have quoted all those quotations. And there, even racial evidence has some value if it fits in with something. But just otherwise, racial evidence, genetic evidence has no sense. Just speculatively, you try to fit it into your theory, it makes no sense.
And one last question, which is our viewers are seeing. So just to give them an understanding, what is the current status? Can you please summarize us where we stand in terms of the debate or the total discussion or discourse we are having for in this field of research, Aryan Invasion theory and out of India theory? What is the total kind of a very short summarization of where we stand?
What is the status of the research? See, research status is whatever is written and presented by us and by them and all. That is the status. But actual status you mean is what is the accepted status, like what is accepted as correct, what is not. See, that is based on politics and academics. Now, there are many things which, it is very useful for politicians to win votes. Now, whether Aryans came from outside or not is not something which will win anyone any votes. So no one is interested in, going into it.
What I'm saying is that according to you, what is the summarized version of what happened? I mean, like, let's say someone who is just interested in understanding what happened. So kind of like a 1 or 2 minute or couple of minutes of explanation for our readers, just what exactly happened, what is the summarized version. Not interested in politicization or the accepted version, just a very summarized version of what actually happened according to you.
Yeah. See, this is what I have said, that in India, there were, if people think, that if you find sites, urban sites with buildings and distinct excavations and all, that means that there was something there. If you don't find it, it means no one existing there. It's a barren land. You haven't found sites in so many parts of the world, and yet people live there. They have languages, they have dances, music, culture. They have their own levels of civilization. So all over India, there was civilization, different things. As I said, what we see as Hinduism today is the amalgamation of all the Indian things. But it is only in the Vedic texts that literary evidence has remained. And it is only in the Northwest that archaeological evidence has remained. So there is this, that wherever there is the evidence is that must be the original. It is not that. All over India, there were people, all over India, there were cultures, all over the languages, music, dance, everything was there, religious practices. But they have not been recorded. The Andamanese language. The Andamanese people have been there since 60,000 years. The oldest book which records the Andamanese language is just 150 years ago when the Europeans came and wrote the book. So does that mean they did not exist before that? So you see, in India, according to our tradition, and traditionally everyone tries to put it in a mythological form. So there was this ancestral Manu Vaivaswata who had 10 sons, and all those 10 sons, from him, all the people of India came into being. That is the basic theory. Now, these books were being written, the Puranas, all in the northwest, right up to UP, what Aryavarta you call, from northwest to UP. So they were concentrated only on the people of that area. That is the Purus, the Yadavas, and the Ikshwakus. So we see all of main concentration is on the Purus, Yadavas, and Ikshwakus. The Anus and Druyus migrated outwards. The Yadus, the Turvashus were more in the interior. And the Ikshwakus were originally not Vedic, but as Vedic culture spread to the west, they became part of that Vedic culture. But beyond that, nothing is recorded. But all those people were there. They had their own dynasties, cultures, civilization, different types. Maybe they don't have, bathing ghats, and they don't have big, Indus Valley type ruins to show us and all that. But they were there. And what actually the paradigm we have is that all of India is actually descended from the this unifying force of Manu Vaivasvat. And even if they were different first, they finally did unify in the form of Hinduism. What we have today, everything is from different parts of India. And it is all Hinduism. People go from right up to, Parshuram Kund in Arunachal Pradesh. They go up to this place in Sindh. I forgot the name. I've written it in my book. They go right up to Kailash Parbat and Mansarovar. They go right down to Kanyakumari. They traverse every single corner of India. And all these traditions have been imbibed into Hinduism. It is not that it all originated in one place. It has all come together as Hinduism. So we have to realize that what we are a unified Indian entity. We have not come from Vedic or Indo-European or this or that, something like that. I don't know if I've made myself clear, but see, I'm better at writing than at talking. So this is
No, I think I got it. I don't know about others, but yeah, because I was also doing PhD at one point of time. So I do understand this reputation and the dogmatic views which you have to continue with, simply because you have spent better 1 or 2 decades of your life to justifying that point of view. So now you can't let go of them. So I understand it happens in research, and but yeah, I understand. The holistic point of view, what I understand is that you're talking about is that we are focused on Rigveda, or we are focused on the archaeological evidence, because those are the ones which remain. It didn't mean that nothing existed in Andaman, or as you are saying, in Bengal at that point of time, or in the south. The point is that we haven't found any literary or which predates Vedas, or probably so that's why the Vedas, etc., become important in answering where did it originate, etc.
the Vedas are the most important book because they have been kept alive. They're unique in the whole world. They have been kept alive from that ancient period, that is why they are very important. Even if they are only a part of the whole of India, one small part of India, but then everything in India is something we have to be proud of, and this is the most ancient thing. So obviously we have to be proud of it.
Got you. Thank you for joining with us and explaining to us your research and scholarship, and sharing your deep insights into this hot topic.
Thank you very much.
Wish you best, and we will continue looking at your blogs. I was going through it. It was vast material. It will take probably months just to read, go through whatever is there in your blog. We'll continue following that and probably invite you again. Thank you.
Thank you for having me on this program.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, sir. Namaste.
Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.